we started trying to bring our interest into the studio a little bit more because we were getting a little bit bored with just, I don't know, the scroll stuff was cool, and Bad Neighborhood stuff was cool, but it was like, it was done, it was out there, and it wasn't really interesting to us anymore. And Andy and his father were big model collectors, and they collected old Ed Roth models, show car models. And these were 1/25th scale cars, and this is a photo of a hot rod that Ed did. And Ed was a really big inspiration to us because when all the guys, this is early 60s, mind you, and when all the other guys were hot rodding 57 Chevys and 32 Fords, Ed was building his own rods and designing his own body. So he sketched this stuff out, and another guy that went to the studio, Ed Newton, would draw it for him, and then he would mold it in plaster, freeform in plaster, and then he laid fiberglass over it, and then knock out the advanced here. He'd knock it out and then have a fiberglass body. And he used this crazy scallop paint job, which is really beautiful if you see a better picture of it. And then the whole thing is controlled by the single lever, so you push it forward, it goes forward, you push it back. And I don't know how well it ever worked, but it looked really good. It shows. But he didn't have any way of doing the top, so what he would do is Buddy did this at a pizza shop, and he would get a flat piece of Mylar and put it in the pizza oven, and then blow air under it, and he would make the bubble top. And we just kind of like that ethic and that ability to go out there and do something sort of against the mainstream. It's kind of what we aspire to. So it was really great when we got the opportunity to work with it. And what would happen is Ed's hot rods would get very, very popular in the car show circuit. So Revell would start doing 1/25th scale models. And before TV was really prevalent, and before video games and all that stuff, kids would build models, and he would sell a lot of these things. It was big business. And he was also the darling of the hot rod press, which made things sort of snowball with him. And out of the blue, we sort of were able to get a hold of him. He was still living at that point in Manti, Utah. We called him and said, hey, we want to do a set of funds based on some of your old lettering. And he said, hey, that's great. I'm getting tired of drawing this shit, so thank you very much. But it was actually really great to work with. And this is a piece, he actually was still touring from time to time, and he was at a car show in Long Island, so we drove up there to meet with him, and he sort of gave us approval on all this stuff. And here he's saying, hey, I'm 60 now, and I don't look like I'm 30 anymore. And Ken did all these really neat illustrations to go with the collection. And this is kind of where we got it from. I mean, this is the tailgate of Ed Roth's pickup truck in 1956, and a really neat little spiky serif, Latin typeface, and we came up with Think Condense. Which was really our first early attempt at trying to get things to sort of artificially bounce and have some animation. And Ken did a pretty good job of it. Again, a model, probably some nameless, anonymous artist, lettering artist at Revell probably did the lettering treatment there. We did a typeface based on what I call Think Sans. So Ed Roth, big inspiration for us. And at some point around then, Ken started drawing this silly little typeface that we call now Chalet, which is really just sort of a combination of Helvetica and Futura that we were doing for internal purposes, and Ken just kept going with it, and he worked out this whole interchangeable character thing that gave it three different, each weight, three different, like a 70s and 80s and a 1960s look to it. And this is actually where it really broke us into saying we don't have to do this commercial work anymore, because after all the crazy stuff, you get something that looks like everything else and it really sells. And I guess that's sort of the moral of that story. It's unfortunate. And we also did all these silhouettes. And I used to make up this really, I don't know, maybe somebody heard my story before, but we used to make up this bullshit story about this guy, Rene Albert Chalet. And the funny thing is, everybody in the type and design community bought it for about 6 months, and newspapers did articles on it and stuff. And people ended up being pretty pissed off at us about it. Some of the writers who really didn't bother to do the research and just sort of took our word for it. They don't really, when we tell them something now, they don't really believe us that it actually exists. For example, when we did Face, they didn't think Neutra existed, but he did. This is a print by Shag, who's a very, very popular artist in Los Angeles in the States now. And we were big fans of his work. Him and my partner got to be pretty good friends, so he did this nice illustration of us, and sort of allowed us to license his name and use some of his illustrations of lettering in his paintings as a model for the font collection. which became the Shag font collection. This is a really great thing. We did this limited edition sculpture that was, I'm going to back up here. No, I don't want to back up that far. We did this limited edition sculpture based on a piece that was in one of the illustrations. And Shag is so popular in the States now that it's sitting on the table there. That sculpture, we did 100 of those, and we sold them for $200 each. And I put them up on the website at 6 o'clock at night, and I didn't take it down at midnight. I'd come down to the office and take it down because they were selling out so fast at $200. It was only about this high, I guess about half a meter high, little wooden sculpture. But Shag is just so popular. And then what this was a triptych, so we cut it up into 3 pieces. And for 50 extra bucks when you bought the font, you could buy one of the prints. But we wouldn't sell you all 3 prints unless you bought. So people were just buying 3 font kits. It was great because the font kit sold for, I forget, it was $175 worth of print. And so we were getting these $525 orders, like lots of them. We did pretty well with that. We have to do that again sometime. But it was good. Good idea. Good idea. I told Andy said, well, we should do 200 of these sculptures. I'm like, there's nobody gonna buy this shit. And afterwards, the next day, I was like, why did we do 200 of those sculptures? Again, this is a more recent thing. This is at Bengat here. If you're not aware of it, you should be, especially if you're sort of into this. He's pretty much a legend in New York and worldwide for some of his typefaces that he's done and a phenomenal amount of lettering he did for photo lettering for other people. This is Ken Barber, who works for us. The collaboration started a long time ago when we had the idea to do a collection based on Ed's work. And it sort of developed over the years. This is Ken working out the script. And this is actually an image from the book, We Think This Receives, September 17th, to make it look like we actually had our shit together. But this is Ken's sketch of a script. It was these are all based on photo lettering alphabets that Ed had drawn. And we came out with the Ed Bengat fonts last year. And the flagship of the Ed Bengat fonts, again, is a font that sort of acts like lettering. It's called Ed Interlock, and it was based on this number 5323, I don't know, which the original name of it escapes me. But it was a photo lettering font. And here's some of the original usages of it. And you see these nice interlocks. And the way that was done was the interlock font had several different films. And the machine operator, the photo lettering machine operator, would switch up the films to get the interlocks to work. And it didn't work that well, depending on how well the operator was. So here's another example of it being used in that era. Well, with all this new technology available to us, we were going to try to figure out how to do that automatically. And this is Tal Lemming, who used to work for us, and Ken trying to work out how all the ligature substitution was going to work. And I'm sure a lot of you heard about OpenType and how you substitute ligatures. But this isn't a straight ligature substitution. There's also a little bit of voodoo going in there that makes it contextual. So it actually substitutes the ligatures on the fly. And it's very, very interesting to watch when it's happening. But basically, a lot of it was grunt work. And Ken just started drawing ligatures, and he drew more ligatures. But I have to say that this is again the grunt part of it. This is the hard part of it. But the thing that makes it work is the contextual substitution. And I'll illustrate that in a minute. It's just a picture of the font line file. So here's that interlock set in all caps, and we've made it work like this. So we've sort of toned it down a little bit, if you will, so that any half on a map is set and it looks okay. So then you have your straight ligature substitution there. But what happens is you get that nice flat line on top. You don't really want that. I mean, you want some more animation to it. So what an interlock does is it looks backwards and forwards to what's coming and going, and it actually makes substitution